Austraeoh by Imploding Colon, read by Deathlight. Chapter 6 Cabin. Rainbow Dash thought it was a boulder at first. However, as she flew closer towards the object on the top of the hill, it turned out to be hollow. Her goggled eyes finally made out what could only be splintery spokes of wood and the crumbling mortar frame of a fireplace. There was no second thought to it. She shifted her wings and coasted down and dove towards the site. The abandoned cabin was located quite literally in the middle of nowhere. Rainbow had since passed over two sharp mountain ranges. Here was a shallow ravine, ran north and south, blotted over with thin grass and green shrubbery. In the center of this ravine, surrounded on all sides by forested mountains, was a lone, run-down cottage. It was as alien could be. It called her like a kindred spirit. She touched down in a flat yard of grass bordering the cabin. Blades of grass splattered her limbs with cold dew as she trotted slowly around the structure. The golden glow of early morning electrified the scene with the raising, platinum mist. Stray butterflies took off and fled lazily from Rainbow's presence as she approached the doorframe to the crumbled house. Standing upon the threshold, Rainbow raised her shaded goggles and stared nakedly upon the junk-laden interior of the place. There was no surviving ceiling, so that every bit of the cabin's contents had been soaked to the brim with moisture, mildew, and the mountain's perpetual breath of fog. There was a bed in the corner, its rusted springs overgrown with vines and flowers. A tattered mattress had spilled over. It must have once made a home for winged creatures. Judging from the threadbare nest, half stuffed in its fluffy folds, the fireplace was full of dried logs, painted over with green mold and algae. Rainbow Dash wondered who had left the pieces of lumber here, unlit, as if some pony was planning a peaceful evening alone. She glanced around the length of the place. There was no sign of another soul having been there for years. She could only wonder just how old the house was, or why it had been built in such a remote place to begin with. Every hoofstep she took sent crackling noises throughout the crumbling domain, tearing down countless years of abandoned history beneath her twitching ears. Her eyes fell over a sea of shattered dinner plates. The slightest hint of floral designs across the porcelain material listened in the natural sunrise. Rainbow let loose a strong exhale. The more she looked, the more debris and rubble appeared to be there. She glanced at the top of the fireplace and saw what looked to be a picture frame. She marched over and raised a hoof to the object, tilting it up so that its canvas surface can once again grace the light of day. All that spoke to her was brown mildew, except for a few stray lines etched into the shape of what she could only determine to be the royal celestial crest. Every moment she saw the solar bands. She dropped the picture frame like a brick to the uneven floor. Her nostrils flared. Spinning around, she trotted firmly back towards the doorframe of the cabin's entrance. Just as she was about to take off, her peripheral vision caught something. She glanced aside, squinted, then knelt down low. In the wooden surface of the broken doorway, there were two initials, carved within the unmistakable outline of a heart. EE and EG. Rainbow Dash's lips pursed. Her wings flexed briefly. She wondered who could have left those initials. How old they had to have been. If the pony who first etched them in could still be alive or not. She pondered over how many years had gone by. Cold winters and dew-laden summers, during which those lone and seemingly insignificant letters had lingered lonesomely, abandoned in the vacuum of two steep mountain ranges, only for one soul, and one soul alone, to eventually stumble upon them. Were they made for her? Could she have possibly given them the proper attention they deserved? Were the two souls who sketched them into the annals of history possibly vanagated from their existence? Rainbow Dash had flown by herself over valleys, mountains, rivers, and plateaus. She had pierced the penumbra of stars and the pale gaze of the moon. Only now did she feel suddenly and hideously alone. A lump formed in her throat. The pennant weighed heavily. She trotted numbly away from the cabin, like a pony possessed. Suddenly, though, she stopped. Her head lifted up, her mane being caught in the warm gust of morning air. She turned around, stared at the cabin, and smiled. Firmly, she trotted into the cottage. She fetched several of the logs that had been left in the fireplace. Opening her saddlebag, she pulled out her metal hatchet and clamped it in her teeth. Using the instrument with expert precision, she hammered 4 of the logs into the ground, so they acted as signposts. Next, she pulled loose a fallen panel of oak from the cabin wall itself. She slid this over and propped it between the 4 logs. She glanced proudly at her work. Not even the strongest blizzard could shove this erect plank of lumber down. Next, she squatted down before the panel and aimed carefully with the sharp edge of her hatchet. With strong teeth, she leaned forward, backward, left, and right, so that she could etch several sharp lines against the pale surface of the oak. It took a better part of the hour, but she was convinced what she had made would last for decades. Once her work was done, she slid the hatchet back into her saddlebag, took a few steps back, and stared at the panel. 5 names shone in the golden light cascading across the valley. The sun was arranged so that the letters could catch the sunlight at both dawn and sunset. But it didn't make Rainbow Dash feel any less lonely. But the sight felt a great deal holier than it did before she arrived. Satisfied with her task, she turned her back to the names, stretched her goggles over her face, and soared sunward, allowing the heat of the birthing day to melt her thoughts into obscurity. Hello everyone, I'm sorry I've been away for a while, but I've already told you why. But it's good to be back to what I've been doing for a while anyways. You might have noticed a bit of sound quality issues in this one. And that was because when I was recording, people were starting to get back to the apartment that I'm sharing. So I had to tone it down a little bit when I was in the middle of it. So that's why you hear the audio jumps every now and again in my narration. And I'm sorry about that. I tried my best to fix it, but it didn't quite fix it all the way, but it was a lot better than when I first started, believe me. Anyways, we keep getting little tidbits of information, if you remember. Like, first off, Rainbow, she feels like throwing away her pendant quite a few times here throughout the story so far, and it's only chapter 6. And I'm kind of wondering why a little bit, and then we get, like, the book, and she feels like she's just gonna get rid of the book, but then she doesn't, which made me wonder, why is the book so significant too? As well as, now, she looked at what appeared to be a celestial crest, and she was just gonna walk out of the cabin and just leave it. My voice cracked there, but anyways, I'm really curious what's going on here. Does Celestia just disappear and took her friends with her, or why is she going east to even begin with? I'm really curious about that myself. Like, is she going east to get her friends back? Like, Celestia took them, or what's going on? And for that is for the next chapter, I guess. And, of course, I will always remind you, because I need the money now. I do have a Patreon and now a PayPal for one-time donations. So, thank you and good night.